All right, so the workshop I was going to go through with you guys today is about where and how to buy parts for FRC robots. So a quick intro of it. My clicker works. And it shut off already. Okay, there we go. So the kind of quick overview of what I'm going to go through today, just an introduction of myself, and I'm going to talk about different vendors you can buy parts from, how to go about buying parts, which might sound pretty easy. All of us know how to buy things off Amazon, but if you're new to buying parts through schools or anything, there can be some hoops to jump through with it. Specialty parts, things you might see on robots that you wondered where teams got those from that you're not just going to find at a Home Depot or around the corner. And then talking about the product donation vouchers we get in the kit each year. So a little bit about myself. My name's Andrew Milakovich. I've done FRC for 15 years now. I was an alumni of Team 498 out of Cactus High School in Glendale, and now I'm the lead mentor for RoboKrew Team 2662 out of Tolleson, Arizona. I do referee and robot inspection at some of the FRC events, usually at Arizona North each year, and I help out at the state championship, and also started doing some with FTC at a few of the competitions recently. Then in my day job, I'm the instrumentation and controls manager at EPCOR. They're a water utility company here around Phoenix. So do programming and all that on kind of big robot pump systems that move all the water and wastewater around. All right, so jumping right into it. First thing is kind of vendors. Where can we actually buy stuff from? You can get parts just about anywhere for FRC. You can go take scrap out of a dumpster and build it for robot parts. There's not too many rules on most of it. The rules do restrict what motors, electronics, and pneumatics you can use. They like to control the power sources so that we can make sure teams aren't throwing a big gas engine from a lawnmower on the robot and running teams off the field. But otherwise, it's pretty much just the budget limits that constrain you. This past season, you had a limit of $500 for any one item you would buy, and then a $4,000 total limit on everything you would put on your robot. Items that come in the kit of parts each year, so the tote that you get as well as anything you can get from the online donation vouchers that are from First Choice, don't count against that budget limit. So your basic control system and the kit of parts chassis, if you use it and all that, are exempt. There's a lot of vendors you can buy from, but a handful of them are kind of our go-tos for FRC. If you look on any of the forums or ask people about it, a lot of the big teams in it will tend to get parts from the same couple of companies here, and we're going to go over those. They cater specifically to FRC in some cases, and they have a pretty good record of not running out of parts in the middle of build season where you can't buy them anymore. The first one's AndyMark. So it was a company that was actually started by two mentors, a Team 45, about almost 15 years ago now, getting pretty close to that. They do a bunch of things for FRC. They actually make the chassis that comes in the kit of parts each year. And you can also buy some of the control system components through them. They'll usually sell the game pieces once kickoff happens. So if you need extras to practice with, you can go to them to buy them. Then just a bunch of parts for your robot. Wheels and rollers if you need to move your robot on the ground or need to have wheels to shoot a ball. Gears, chain and sprockets, all sorts of stuff you might need to transmit power across your robot and build mechanisms. And then aluminum framing, so you can buy normal aluminum tubes and different extrusions that you can use for building your robot. Bearings, shafts, decent place to get bumper material. You have to put bumpers on your robot each year. The cloth, if you don't know where to go get it, AndyMark sells it. It's one option to buy it. If you don't have pool noodles nearby where your team is, you can also get it from them. Arizona, we usually don't have that problem, but if you live in the Midwest or somewhere else in the middle of winter, it's hard to find pool noodles anywhere locally. They sell a few small things like wire and bolts and that locally there, and then also some basic hand tools, just some screwdrivers and wrenches, but not anything fancy. You're not going to get power drills and a lot of that from them. That went really fast. Yeah, it's back to like the fourth one. Vex. I don't like the reception in this room. All right, so we'll keep going. Let's see what my clicker keeps doing throughout this presentation. Vex Robotics is another big vendor that you can get parts from. They also got started by some alumni and mentors from FRC teams, and they've been involved as a sponsor like Andy Mark for a lot of years as well. They actually helped design a lot of the control system components, the power distribution board and the voltage modules, and a lot of the motor controllers are made by them. They've started selling game pieces recently. They also do a lot of the other same things as Andy Mark. You can get wheels, gearboxes, chain. Gives you more options. They're not identical to what Andy Mark sells. They have different applications and different uses. They don't have quite as many basic items. You're not going to get bolts from them. You're not going to really go buy electrical wire or things like that. But they have more advanced offerings. They tend to have more gearbox options than Andy Mark does, or more ways to customize it. If you need a gearbox that has to sit one way and transmit power around a corner, they've got stuff for it that you may not find in other places. They also have a lot of crossover with another company called West Coast Products. So if you look on Vex and they're out of parts for some reason, it's not going to be back in stock for 2 weeks, you can check West Coast Products and they'll sometimes have the same ones in stock that Vex doesn't, because they have different warehouses. I click once. Yeah. All right, McMaster Cars, the other really big one that you hear a lot. They're an industrial maintenance supply company, so robotics selling to FRC teams is a very, very, very small part of their business. You'll see them sell to big manufacturing plants and warehouses and all sorts of places like that. They have a huge catalog. They sell everything. You can get wires and bolts and nuts, stuff like that from them. You can get tools. We've bought a lot of wrenches from them and drill bits, things like that. They'll sell everything. You can buy entire CNC machines if you want to from them, and you can get pretty massive with it. They'll sell office supplies. If you need to buy clipboards for your team and for some reason you can't buy them somewhere else, you can buy them from McMaster. One nice thing is they have really, really fast shipping. They have one big warehouse out of California, and it's usually 3 days or less to get out here. For me, it's usually been 3. Tim's told me that he can get them the next day, but they must not like me as much. Some of the downsides with them, you can get just about everything, but there are limits with them. You can't choose what brands you get typically. So if you wanted to buy a drill from them, you don't really get to pick if it's a DeWalt drill or a Milwaukee drill or a Ryobi drill. You just get a drill, and you may not know what it is before it shows up. They are a bit more expensive than most other options because they ship really fast and they sell everything and they're convenient to use. They charge you a little bit of a premium to be able to use them. And their catalog's just really, really big. If you have never looked at it before and you're trying to find some specific part, you can get a little overwhelmed. If you say, well, I need a bolt, the bolt needs to be 2 inches long, there's going to be thousands of options that show up that way. So you have to learn how to use their system to filter to what you actually need to find from it. But they work as a really good catch-all to buy any parts or tools that you can't get anywhere else. So those 3 vendors can supply just about every part you need for your robot, which is nice if you can't get a lot of places approved to buy from through your school. You can get basically all the parts you need from these. You don't have to worry about going to other places. Local industrial vendors do give you more options if you are able to buy from them. There's a company that's in a lot of cities, including here in Phoenix, called Granger, that we like to get some of our stuff from. They actually already have a contract with the maintenance department at our school, so we get free shipping on all our orders, which is nice. They've got better pricing on materials and fasteners a lot of times than McMaster. They don't have quite as large of a selection, but if you know you need these type of bolts and they carry them, it might be a couple bucks cheaper. They've also got more tool selection. You can actually pick the brands on some of the stuff and that, so it gives you more options with them. Local metal suppliers are also really good for being able to get materials. It's pretty much always the cheapest option to buy metal is to go find a metal shop somewhere in town and get it. And if you ask them nicely, you may even be able to get free scraps from them. They're selling a 20-foot bar to someone and they only need 17 feet. They'll cut the end off. They may not be able to sell that 3-foot bar or 2-foot bar or whatever to someone, and you can get free pieces that are left over from them on occasion. Local hardware stores are the other good place we like to go look at stuff. Home Depot or Lowe's, Harbor Freight. Big thing with those, you can walk in and buy it on the same day. If you're buying things online, you're always going to be waiting for it to ship. If you're working pretty late into a day and need something right then because you're trying to finish the robot up to put it in the bag the next day, you can't wait on shipping. So they're a good option for all those emergency scenarios. Also, more brands. Again, they're probably the best option for power tools because I can go pick what I want and they do sales on it, which most of these industrial companies are catering to big businesses that aren't waiting to buy the tools when they're on sale. So you'll get them cheaper here. The one thing to look for is if you're buying through your school, they may have a contract on who you can use. Our school has a contract with Lowe's, so we actually can't buy anything from Home Depot through our school. We've initially bought tools from them one year, and then they changed to the other, and then we found out, oh, we can't buy any more from them, which was a bit of a surprise. All right, so, and kind of going into how you can actually buy the parts. Again, seems like a simple question. We all know how to buy from Amazon. You go on and enter your credit card and click order and buy now and it gets shipped to you. But if you're dealing with schools, it's not always so simple if you're a school-based team. If you are, a couple options for buying things. If you can use a credit card, it's usually the easiest way. It's very fast. You enter it online. You get what you want right then. If you have a credit card that's issued by your school or by a booster club, it works really well. The catch is not all schools will do that. They don't always have a card available. If you have mentors that are buying parts or helping out with it, you want to check before they use any personal cards to buy things. Some schools take a really long time to reimburse stuff. If I buy something for the team, it may be 3 months before they'll pay you back. And in that case, you're kind of stuck eating that in the meantime. And some schools flat out won't reimburse non-employees. So I'm not a teacher at the school, I'm just a volunteer. If I buy something, they're gonna go, you're not a school employee, we can't pay you back for that. So you wanna know those things beforehand if you're gonna be purchasing parts. And yeah, some schools just have a blanket, no credit cards at all. They don't issue them, they don't reimburse personal ones, you just can't use them. That's kind of the stance we've taken with ours. So if you can't buy with a credit card, the next thing you use is purchase orders. They're more common in businesses. When you get into the business world, that's what almost everything uses to buy. It's just a contract to buy parts from a seller. To get one, you have to know what parts you want to order. It's called getting a quote. So you get a list with, here's the parts you want and the prices of all of them on a sheet. Then you can submit that quote once you have one to the purchasing department at your school. They take a while to process it. They make a purchase order. Then they give it back to you and you can send it to the vendor to order the parts. If you have a nice purchasing department, they'll send it to them for you and you don't have to worry about that step, but that's kind of the process of it. The downside with them is they can be pretty slow after you get a quote. If it's a brand new vendor you've never bought from and is not set up with your school, they have to set them up. They have to get tax information and sometimes do credit checks, and that can take a little bit of time. Then once it's approved, someone at the school actually has to approve the purchase. So it may have to go to your principal or some other administrator, and you have to wait for their approval before it goes through. And then after all of that, your purchasing group at the school could just be backlogged. In a lot of cases, it might be one person or two people for the whole district. If they've got 30 other POs, yours gets to sit in line and wait until they've gotten through the other ones. So ordering can take a long time. We've had times where we've requested a PO and it took 2 months before the parts got ordered, which is obviously a really long time. Doesn't work very well for build season, but if it's something where you can buy it in the summer to use in the fall, it works okay in that case. So if that has a really long delay on it, the option that we like to use for build season is open purchase orders. So they're similar thing, or still a purchase order, but instead of saying I want this many motors and this many gearboxes, you just set it for a dollar amount. I want a PO for $1,000 to McMaster Car. I don't know what I want from them yet. I just want a PO for up to $1,000. You don't need a quote to set it up, which is nice, and you can do it ahead of time. So you can request it in November or December so that it's set up for build season, and then during build season, you can just order parts off of it as you need. You put your order in with the company and give them the PO number to charge it against, and you can use it practically like a credit card. Still takes slightly longer than a credit card because you got to email it to them and make sure they know the number on it, so it might take half a day of delay from when you pick out the parts you want to when they get ordered, but it's still a lot better than waiting for the big normal purchase order process. It's taken by most vendors. Andy, Mark Vex, and McMaster all do it. Most places I've run into Home Depot and that'll do it too. There are a few that won't. Harbor Freight doesn't take it for local stores. Amazon doesn't either. So if your school doesn't let you use credit cards at Amazon, you can't buy parts from Amazon because they won't take purchase orders, at least when we've been working with them before. All right, so then some unique items you can find in FRC you might see. If you go to competitions, you might see teams with these orange belts on their robot. A lot of times they'll be on conveyor systems. They'll move balls around or move game pieces, that type of thing. They're actually known as urethane belts. McMaster Carr has been the big source for them for most teams. You can get them both in flat belts, that are 1/2 inch wide, 1 inch wide, 2 inch wide, or round belts, depending on what you need for your application. They're really good for game piece handling. You can shoot things with them too if you want to. They're not quite as fast as wheels, but you can build them for that. And the nice thing with them is you can assemble them using a heat gun. So it's not something where with normal conveyor belts, you might have to stitch it together or put alligator clips in it. With these, you put the two pieces together, heat them up with a heat gun, keep them lined up in something, and just push them together till they're melted and let them cool down, and you can trim off the edges, and they form pretty strong connections that way. Vex Robotics and West Coast Products did start selling some belts this past season. They offer it in black now, so you have 2 color options now. You can get orange or black, but it's a good thing to be able to find. If McMaster, for some reason, was out of them, the name brand of it is Eagle Polyurethane Belting. You can find it at other places, but with McMaster and Vex both selling it, it's usually not worth trying to find it somewhere else because it's small companies that may or may not have it in stock. You also might see a lot of these at competitions, the quick electrical disconnects on the team's wiring. Those are known as Anderson power poles. Andy Mark sells them on their website. They work well for quick disconnect of electronics, which makes it really nice to swap things out during competition if they break. You have your motor controllers wired up with it and the motor controller fries. You just unplug the 2 ends, take it out, put a new one in, plug it in, and you're good to go. A little quicker to do and undo than some of the other crimp connections. If you're going to use them, you need to have a proper crimper. You see the little metal connectors that fit inside those plastic tabs. Those have to be crimped onto the electrical wires. There's ratcheting crimpers that you can buy with a special die to line that up so that you just press down till it releases and it makes a good connection on it. If you're trying to do it with a pair of pliers or something, it might pull off on you in the middle of competition. You can get them other places too. Amazon sells them now. There's a company called PowerWorks that's a big distributor of them. But Andy Mark's one of the cheaper options that I've seen. And then wheels. You'll see tons of wheels that teams have. Gray wheels, green wheels, red wheels, orange wheels. Different places you can buy them from, but Andy Mark and Vex both sell quite a few of them. They've added new wheels every single season for probably the last 5 or 6 years for intakes and shooters. They sell wide wheels that can be used that are solid. You can use them for driving or for shooting things. They also sell compliant wheels or squishy wheels. If you look at them, they actually compress so that if you're trying to grab something like boxes we had this past year, boxes don't squish, at least not very much. Instead of having the object squish down like you would with a foam ball or something, the wheel squishes, so it conforms around the object and helps to bring it in. BaneBot sells some as well. They actually gave a sample of it in the kit of parts their last year or 2 years ago. Their wheels are a little thinner if you need ones that are only like a 1/2 inch wide or a 1/4 inch wide. All of them you can usually get in different durometers, which is just the technical term for how grippy they are. The color of them typically varies with what the durometer is of it. And I said another great thing for game piece handling, you'll see them on tons of robots and they're not too much. Some of those compliant wheels I think are $4, $5 a wheel now, something like that. So they're coming down in price quite a bit. Sure. All right, then product donation vouchers, the last part of this here. So every year we get the kit of parts. You'll pick it up tomorrow. You've got your tote with all of the parts they give us each season in it, motors and different bearings and whatnot, and you'll get probably a drivetrain as well. In addition to that, there's also online vouchers you can use. So there's codes that the main mentors on your team can access online through their FRC account on the FRC dashboard that let you log in and buy parts using credits or donation vouchers. You can get a bunch of tools and parts for very little cost. Usually it's just the cost of shipping, or if you have a part you have a $25 voucher and it's $30, then you just pay the $5 difference. So it's a good way to be able to stock up on things. First Choice is the biggest one of these by far. They give you credits each year that you can use to go in for parts. They kind of do it as a little auction thing. There's so many parts that are available through it. Andy Mark runs the site that they don't want teams to just have a mad dash and crash the site right when it opens trying to buy everything. So you submit a list of what are the things I want in the order I want them, and then they take all the team's orders and randomize them, and they just go down and say, you get your first item, you get your first item, and go through until they've gone through everyone's first item. And if they get to yours and that's not available, then they go to your second item. And if that one's not available, then your third one. And they go through until everybody's credits are used up or everyone's lists are out of items on it. The first round actually happened a month before kickoff, so the deadline for it was in the first week of December, so that's actually already passed. But they'll have a second round with First Choice shortly after kickoff, so it'll open up again tomorrow to submit priority lists, and it'll be open until I think it's Thursday or so this week. Sometime this coming week it'll close again, and then they'll issue the remaining parts and credits for teams on that second round. You can get a ton of stuff from it, electronics, tools, all sorts of various parts. You can easily get $500 worth of equipment each year out of it, so it's something you really want to do. All of the electronics you would need to build a second robot you can get through First Choice other than the RoboKrew. So you can get the power distribution board, the voltage module, the pneumatics module. Usually you can get radios, motor controllers. So if you want to eventually be able to have multiple robots at a time that are operational, if you have nothing else to spend your credits on, just buy electronics each year through this. And after 2 seasons, all that's left is to get another RoboKrew and you can have 2 robots driving at the same time. Like I said, after kickoff, they'll be adding additional credits to teams. So if you already used all your credits in the first round, they give you usually 100 or 200 more, and they'll add some new parts. They never put the game pieces up until after kickoff. They don't want people to know what the game pieces are, but that's usually an option that'll show up in the second round. So to kind of emphasize, if you aren't using your First Choice credits, you should, because it's a bunch of money that you're not utilizing for free stuff. All right, some of the other companies that have donation vouchers, these are 2 for pneumatics, Bimba and Clippard. So they put out vouchers that you can use to get free cylinders or just parts off their site. Clippard is known for pneumatic cylinders. That's what you get from them, or Bimba. Clippard does just a voucher on any of their parts. Most teams use their storage tanks for air for holding on to them, but they also sell cylinders. You can get solenoids and tubing and other fittings. Even if you don't use pneumatics in a season, you should still use these vouchers each year because you can stock up on them for future. So if you don't use pneumatics for 2 years, but you keep buying some cylinders that you might use in the future, you've got them available to you in a game where you actually want to have them. All right, Inventables is a company that makes a little carving machine, kind of like a CNC mill, but it's usually for wood or really small things. Their voucher is usable on any of the parts on their site. Even if you don't own their carving machine, they still have other stuff that's useful to teams. What we got from them last year, they actually had a crimper set with connectors for PWM cables. So if you wanted to make your own sensor or PWM cables for wiring things on your robot, you can get the hookups for that. They usually have different hand tools available, screwdrivers or little wrenches or whatever on it, and also just some small pieces of aluminum and plastic that you can get. Automation Direct is a company that does industrial automation stuff. So they sell for manufacturing equipment and all the electronics and that to run things. They're a really good source for both electrical and pneumatic items. They have some really nice solenoid valves that are high flow and only 20 or 30 bucks each that you can use to drive pneumatics. They're a lot cheaper than some of the other options, and you can get 1 or 2 with your voucher each season. They also have some tools. We've gotten step drill bits before from them. They've got other, I know knockout punches and some other screwdrivers and wiring tools on there. DigiKey is a big electronics vendor. They sell all sorts of sensors and wire and everything else. You can always get wire from them. If you don't want that, you've already got wire coming out of your ears. You can also get some tools, crimpers and strippers, a lot of the electrical ones, and again, some basic things like wrenches. TE Connectivity is a electrical connection company. They have a little more limited selection. You can only use it on the handful of parts that they make, but it still gets you crimp tubing or crimp terminals. You can get heat shrink tubing to cover and insulate electronic wires, and you can get some switches from them if you need a little micro switches for acting as limit switches on your robot. Then there's just some other items for your vouchers. There's single item ones. A couple companies like Armabot will give you a voucher just for your encoder, or just for one of their encoders. Or Maxbotics will give you one just for one of their ultrasonic sensors. You can't use it on anything else from them. In some cases, that's all the company makes, but you get it in the kit each year. Doesn't hurt to stock up on them in case you have a use for them either in the game or as an off-season project. If you wanted to make a little robot that runs around with sonar sensors and tries to avoid hitting walls, you can play with that later. And then other vouchers, some of the companies will donate stuff specific to their products that may not have use most of the time. Like Vulcan Spring makes constant force springs. You can get them each year, and again, if you have an application for them, then you can use it for it. They were also part of one of the field builds, I think, for 2016. So if you wanted to recreate one of the pieces of the field with a gate that would go up and down, you had to have the force springs to help bring it up and down properly, like on the field. All right, so kind of the big summary on these, just take advantage of all the donations that are being offered. Even if you're not going to use a part in a season, it's still helpful to get things for future years or just tools that you're able to use. You do want to read how the vouchers work. Some of them require you to put the code in before you put stuff in your cart checkout, so you don't want to accidentally buy it on a credit card and find out you can't use the voucher. And then a couple of the vendors, they're like TE, their catalogs are a little more technical, like shopping on McMaster cars. So look through it and try to find what you need on it. If you get confused, reach out to another team or a mentor on your team or someone else to get help with it. If nothing else, just buy tools each year with stuff. If you can't figure out what you want to get off of them, you can probably use more pliers because you'll break them, or you can probably use more wrenches or screwdrivers. It's worth it rather than just letting the voucher go in the trash. All right, and the end here is just some links to everything that I mentioned in here. So if I'll send the presentation out to you guys on this, and it'll be shared through Randy for all the kickoff workshops. But these are all the different vendors and companies that were kind of talked about through this. That's everything I had to go through. Wanted to see if you guys had questions on things I went over here or other things related to buying parts or with robotics.
I have one thing to say. You know, I've been around for a while.
Yep.
I've been longer than you even. But one thing we did is we got Home Depot. We can only buy from Home Depot. So we went down, we're good friends with them. So we have them when tools come in. You know, a lot of tools, people buy them, they take them home, unpack them, decide they don't want it, they send it right back. It's repacked. There's nothing wrong with them. They're usually 20% off. So we have a deal with them that when stuff that they think we really want, they give us a call and we go down and pick it up. So, you know, get to know your vendors. Southwest Fasteners. If you go to Southwest Fasteners, I don't know if they're still doing it, but every team that I know that goes down there, they will give you a startup bolts and nuts, what you need. They give you a bunch of them. I mean, I'm talking, you know, 80 different sizes, 100 bolts each.
Oh yeah, that's quite a bit.
You go to them and say, well, we'll take 20. They say, no, whatever the box is, we're going to give you a box. Because it's easier for them just to take a box and hand you the box individual. Yep. So Southwest fasteners is one to go to. And there's a lot of companies. The third thing I'd like to emphasize for these people is a booster club. I know we have to go through the school, time consuming and so forth. You get a booster club, you can get that stuff in one day. It's just that even if you're not using a credit card or anything else, it's just so much easier. I think every team should have a booster club because it cuts out all this rigmarole about, and we've gone for 2 months. We used to have to use Home Depot, the other one.
Lowe's, yeah.
Lowe's.
Yep.
And so we made a big order for Lowe's. Lo and behold, beginning of the year, and they didn't tell us, we waited a month and none of our stuff come in. Oh, well, we can't use Lowe's anymore.
After you already ordered.
Why didn't you tell us? So we had to go reorder everything through Home Depot. So, a booster club. So those are the three things I just wanted to put out there if they're worth to you.
Yeah, no, those are good ones because that's part of why I talked for a little while in here about purchase orders and that of we figured out how to navigate through our school system well enough that we can get the parts we need, but it is buying through schools, especially some of the districts here, it's pretty restrictive on where you can get parts from or how fast it is, and they're not quick.
Sending lunch down to headquarters in Mesa Public Schools, we send them lunch every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's amazing when our orders come up. Sometimes we have got POs done in 3 days.
Yep. We're good friends with our principal, and when we get stuck on stuff, I know we'll nudge her and be like, we need this tomorrow. Can you help us get it? So, well, good. Thank you. Good advice to help add to all this. You guys have any questions on? Yeah.
So you can do multiple vendors and purchase orders.
Yep. Yeah. So like what we do, we usually try to put in an open PO for Vex, Andy Mark, McMaster, Granger, I forget who else. Lowe's, because we can't use Home Depot right now. We usually try to get all of them set up with an open PO before the season starts. If you know parts you're going to use no matter what, you can even buy them ahead of time. Like tools, you can probably buy those in the fall. You don't need to wait till build season. But Andy Mark and Vex and those, you want to have something available so that you're able to get things in build season. We won't know the game till tomorrow. You may find out, oh man, we really, really need a pneumatic tire this year because it's going to be running over defenses like a couple of years ago.
I'll tell you, I've been trying to get rid of them for years.
But since you won't know what you're going to need ahead of time, it's helpful to be able to have those open and set up so that you can go with them. Now, if your school will let you do credit cards, or like you mentioned, if you have a booster club or something outside of the school that you can work through and it makes purchasing easier, it's not as big of a deal. But if you are buying through the school, a lot of them, the PO process isn't quick, and so that's what it helps out with.
And also make sure you can buy it through your school. A lot of schools you can't buy paints and solvents, and every once in a while they just say, well, you can't buy that. No real rhyme or reason. Clorox bleach.
They won't let you get.
They said we couldn't buy it.
Okay. I haven't tried to do something yet that they've hated, but I can see that.
So just stay up on that, what you can buy.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys. I think that was everything for this workshop. You want to